The wind cut sharp through the empty Wyoming plains, dragging lines of dust along the old trail that led to Reeves' ranch. A single wagon creaked its way down that road, drawn by a mule so thin its ribs showed. On the seat sat Martha Lane, her bonnet pulled low to keep the cold off her cheeks. Her 2 boys huddled beneath a tattered blanket beside her. They'd buried their father 3 months back under a cottonwood tree behind their old place. What little they had of it. And now she was chasing the smallest chance left. Word in town was that Colton Reeves, a quiet rancher north of the river, had lost a few hands after the winter storm. He was hiring again. Folks said he paid fair, didn't talk much, and never turned away a soul who came honest. Martha didn't know if that was true, but she knew she had to try. When she reached the ranch, the sun was sliding low, orange light spilling over the hills like fire in the grass. She climbed down, steadying herself on the wagon's edge, and told her boys to stay put. The main house stood strong but simple. Unpainted boards, smoke curling from the chimney, a couple of horses grazing in the corral. She could hear the faint clang of a hammer somewhere behind the barn. She followed the sound until she saw him. Colton Reeves stood near a fence post, sleeves rolled to his elbows, driving a nail with slow, measured strikes. He wasn't old, but his face carried the marks of weather and years of work. His eyes were steady, the color of storm clouds right before rain. Martha gathered what courage she had left. "Mr. Reeves?" He stopped mid-swing, turned, and gave a single nod. "Ma'am, I heard you might be needin' help. I can cook, mend, and handle most chores. I brought my boys, they're good with animals." He leaned on the hammer handle, studying her. "Most women lookin' for work go to town. Why here?" She hesitated. "Ain't much left in town for us. My husband passed last winter. I can work for our keep. We don't need much, just a roof and something to eat." Colton's gaze softened, just barely. "You any good with bread?" Martha blinked. "Sir?" He motioned toward the house. The last cook near burned the kitchen down trying to make biscuits. "I could use one who knows how to keep a fire steady." She let out a small breath, half relief, half disbelief. "Yes, sir. I can do that." He nodded once. "Then start with supper." By the time the stars came out, the kitchen smelled of stew and warm bread. Her boys ate like they hadn't seen food in weeks. Colton sat across the table, quiet but not cold. When the meal ended, Martha gathered the dishes, saying softly, "Thank you, Mr. Reeves." He said nothing for a long while, just watched her hands move. Finally, he spoke. "You can stay in the bunkhouse for now. Plenty of space. We'll talk about wages come Sunday." She froze mid-motion. "You're not worried about talking in strangers?" He shook his head. "Ain't worried about much that comes honest." Days turned to weeks. Martha rose before dawn, made breakfast for the crew, packed lunches, and worked alongside them when she could. Her boys helped in the stables, earning small smiles and soft pats from the men who'd gone quiet since the last storm took half the herd. The ranch changed under her touch. Fires burned warmer, bread baked golden, laughter came easier at the table. But she never quite lost that edge of humility, that habit of apologizing for taking up space. One evening, as she scrubbed clothes beside the well, Colton came by leading his horse. He stopped, watching her wring water from a shirt. "You don't need to do all that," he said. She kept her eyes down. "Can't sit still while there's work needs doin', Dut." He leaned against the post, voice low. "You work harder than most men I've hired." She smiled faintly. "That's kind of you to say, sir. But I've learned, hard work's the only thing that don't leave." He studied her for a moment longer before walking off toward the barn. Spring came. The snows melted and the rivers ran full. Martha planted a small garden behind the house. The boys built birdhouses from scrap wood, painting them bright red and yellow. The ranch grew alive again. So did she. One afternoon, Colton rode into town and didn't return till near dusk. When he came back, he found her sitting on the porch steps, darning a sleeve. He held out a paper bag. "Picked up something for you." Inside was a bolt of blue fabric, soft, sturdy cotton, finer than anything she'd owned. She stared at it, then at him. "Mr. Reeves, this is too much. I can't take it." He tilted his hat back slightly. "Ain't payment. Just figured a woman workin' this hard ought to have something decent to sew for herself." Her throat tightened. She tried to speak, but no words came. For the first time in months, she felt seen, not as a burden, not as a widow, but as a person. It was late summer when the storm hit, black clouds rolling over the horizon, wind snapping through the grass like fire. By nightfall, the river had risen high, flooding the low fields. Martha helped the men drive cattle to higher ground, her dress soaked and hair plastered to her face. At one point, her youngest slipped in the mud, nearly swept away. Colton caught him, hauling him to safety with one arm while steadying Martha with the other. When the storm finally broke, they stood together under the barn eaves, trembling, soaked to the bone. "You all right?" he asked, voice barely above the rain. She nodded, tears mixing with the downpour. "You saved my boy." He looked at her, rain dripping from his hat brim. "You'd have done the same for me." Weeks later, when the land dried and the fences were mended, Colton brought her to the porch one quiet evening. The sun was setting behind the hills, painting the sky in gold. He said softly, "Martha, I've been thinking about the ranch. About you and the boys." She frowned slightly. "We can find another place if you need us gone." "I understand." He cut her off gently. "That ain't what I meant." She looked up. His expression was calm, but his voice carried something new, steady, certain. "You said once no one marries a broken woman. Maybe that's true for some men. But I ain't looking for perfect, Martha. I'm looking for someone who knows how to hold on when the wind hits." She stood frozen, breath caught in her chest. He took off his hat, eyes never leaving hers. "This ranch feels like home again since you came. So if you'll have me, I'd like to make it yours too." The following spring, the fields were greener than anyone remembered. The garden bloomed wild. The boys laughed as they chased chickens through the yard. And on the porch, Colton and Martha sat side by side, coffee cups in hand, watching the sun rise over the land they'd built together. She turned to him, smiling softly. "You ever think about how far we've come?" He chuckled. "Every sunrise, ma'am. Every one." The wind whispered through the grass, gentle and warm, carrying the scent of rain and new beginnings. And for the first time in a long while, Martha Lane didn't feel broken. She just felt home. The seasons rolled on gentle as a hymn. By autumn, Reeves Ranch had become something more than a place to work. It was a place to live. Laughter drifted from the barn at dusk. Lantern light spilled through kitchen windows where warmth never used to dwell. Martha often found Colton out by the fence line, fixing what didn't need fixing, just to watch the sky burn pink over the hills. She'd bring him coffee, their hands brushing as he took the cup. Neither spoke much, they didn't,